History says Rome always wins. But on one night, the sea refused to obey. Two names stood against an empire, Antony and Cleopatra, and the world almost changed forever. The night before history broke, the ancient world believed Rome was eternal. Not because Rome was kind, not because Rome was just, but because Rome never stopped. It consumed land the way fire consumed dry grass, slowly at first, then all at once. Kingdoms fell, languages vanished, gods were replaced. And Rome called this order. For centuries no one had truly stopped it, until one night on a dark sea where history hesitated, the Mediterranean lay unnaturally still. No wind, no waves, just thousands of ships floating like shadows beneath a pale moon. Lanterns flickered across decks filled with men who pretended not to be afraid. They all knew this was not just a battle. This was a decision. On one side stood Octavian, young, calculating, and patient, Rome's chosen heir, a man who did not inspire love but demanded obedience. On the other stood Mark Antony, Rome's greatest general, now declared its enemy. A man of loyalty, excess, pride, and contradiction. And beside him stood Cleopatra VII, Queen of Egypt, last pharaoh. The woman Rome feared more than any army. Cleopatra stood at the edge of her flagship, wrapped in a dark cloak. Gold rested against her skin, not for beauty, but for meaning. Every piece carried the weight of dynasties older than Rome itself. She was not afraid of death. She was afraid of being erased. Behind her, Antony watched the horizon. His armor was scratched. His face carried the marks of years of war and wine. Rome had given him everything, and now wanted his head. "You're quiet," he said. Cleopatra smiled faintly. "So are gods," she replied. "Until they decide." Antony laughed softly, but his eyes remained fixed on the darkness. Tomorrow Rome would try to destroy them. Rome's favorite lie. Rome called Cleopatra a seductress. It was easier than calling her intelligent. They said she had bewitched Julius Caesar, that she had enslaved Antony's mind, that she ruled men through desire instead of reason. But Rome feared something else entirely. She understood power without pretending it was virtue. Cleopatra spoke Latin, Greek, Egyptian, and the language of politics fluently. She read philosophy while Roman senators struggled with speeches written for them. She knew Rome's hunger because she had studied it. Rome did not conquer because it was strong. Rome conquered because it was empty, always wanting more. Octavian understood this too, but he believed only one man should control that hunger. Cleopatra believed hunger should be balanced. That belief made her dangerous. The war no one wanted, but everyone needed. After Julius Caesar's assassination, Rome pretended it wanted freedom again. It lied. The Republic was dead. It simply hadn't stopped breathing yet. Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus divided the Roman world between them, calling it cooperation. In truth, it was a pause before bloodshed. Lepidus fell first, quietly, forgotten. That left two futures. Octavian ruled the West with discipline and propaganda. He spoke of tradition while building something new, a state where loyalty flowed upward to him alone. Antony ruled the East with soldiers and alliances. He drank, laughed, fought, and trusted, and Cleopatra watched both men carefully. She did not choose Antony because she loved him. She chose him because Rome could not survive two Octavians. Actium, where the world held its breath. The Battle of Actium was never meant to be fair. Octavian's Admiral Agrippa commanded lighter ships, faster turns, disciplined crews. Roman formations were designed to suffocate opponents. Antony's ships were massive, heavy, and slow. Rome expected an easy victory. What Rome did not expect was patience. Cleopatra's fleet did not rush forward. They drifted sideways, holding formation in a way that confused Roman commanders. Signals passed. Orders changed. Then the wind shifted. Egyptian captains raised black banners, the signal Cleopatra herself had chosen. Small ships broke away. At first, Octavian's fleet laughed. Then the ships caught fire. Flames leapt from deck to deck. Smoke rolled across the sea, blinding commanders. Horns sounded conflicting orders. Ships collided. Agrippa tried to reorganize. Too late. Antony's fleet surged forward, not recklessly but precisely. Heavy ships smashed Roman hulls. Grappling hooks pulled enemies close. The sea turned red. By sunset, the impossible had happened. Rome was losing. The man who was supposed to be emperor. Octavian watched from his flagship as control slipped away. He did not panic. He calculated. Victory was no longer possible, but survival was. As darkness fell, his ship turned away. Quietly, without ceremony. The future emperor of Rome fled into the night. History would remember Augustus as inevitable. But inevitability died at Actium. Silence across the empire. News traveled faster than armies. Octavian defeated. Agrippa missing. Antony victorious. Cleopatra alive. Rome did not riot. Rome froze. The Senate denied it. The priests prayed against it. Merchants hid their gold. The poor waited for hunger. Rome had lived too long believing it could not lose. Now it did not know how to exist. Cleopatra's first victory. Antony wanted to march on Rome immediately. Cleopatra stopped him. "You don't conquer Rome with legions," she said. "You conquer it with bread." Within weeks, Egyptian grain ships arrived in Italy. Hunger faded. Markets stabilized. Rome began to breathe again. And without realizing it, Rome began to depend. Rome learns to need her. Rome had faced defeat before, but never uncertainty. Wars could be explained. Losses could be buried. Generals could be blamed. What Rome could not understand was dependence. And that was exactly what Cleopatra introduced. The grain ships arrived quietly. No announcement. No victory parade. Just ships unloading wheat into empty storehouses. Within days, bread returned to the markets. Prices stabilized. Riots dissolved before they began. The poor ate. The rich relaxed. Rome did not celebrate. Rome exhaled. And in that breath, something ancient shifted. Antony at the gates. Mark Antony stood outside Rome longer than any conqueror ever had. His legions camped beyond the city walls, disciplined and silent. No looting, no threats, no banners raised. This was not mercy. This was calculation. Rome watched nervously from its towers. Senators argued behind closed doors. Priests sacrificed animals, searching for signs that refused to appear. Antony was supposed to storm the city. He did not. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly fear turned into confusion. "Why does he wait?" they whispered. Cleopatra knew the answer. Rome had always resisted force, but it had never resisted relief. The Queen's conditions. Before Antony entered Rome, Cleopatra sent a message to the Senate. Not a demand, an invitation. She would enter the city, unarmed, unguarded, without crown or title. In return, the Senate would hear her speak. Many senators protested. Some called it humiliation. Others called it suicide. But hunger had softened pride. They agreed. The day Rome met Cleopatra. Cleopatra entered Rome at dawn. She walked. No chariot, no guards, no display of wealth. She wore simple linen dyed white, the color of ritual purity in Egypt. Gold rested lightly on her wrists, not as excess, but as identity. The streets were silent. Romans had been taught to expect a monster, a foreign enchantress who ruled men through temptation. Instead, they saw calm, eyes that did not rush, steps that did not hesitate. She did not look conquered. She looked unafraid, and that frightened them more. The Senate Hall. The Senate Hall smelled of stone, age, and fear. Cleopatra stood at the center, alone. Senators sat in silence, their white robes trembling slightly in the morning air. She spoke first, in Latin, perfect Latin. "I did not come to rule Rome," she said calmly. "I came because Rome no longer knows how to rule itself." Murmurs rippled through the hall. She continued, "You fear kings, yet you follow men who behave like them. You speak of tradition while destroying it yourselves. You wanted Octavian not because he loved Rome, but because he promised to control it." A senator rose angrily. "You are an Egyptian queen," he shouted. "You have no place." Cleopatra turned to him. "Egypt fed Rome today," she replied. "Did Octavian?" The hall fell silent. Antony speaks last. Antony entered only after Cleopatra finished. He wore no armor, only a plain Roman cloak. "I will not be king," he said simply. "And she will not be queen of Rome." Gasps echoed. Antony raised his hand. "But Rome cannot survive pretending it still lives in the past. The Republic is not dying. It is already dead. You are deciding only whether its death will be violent or intelligent." The Senate did not vote that day. They argued until nightfall, then until dawn. Fear battled pride, hunger battled tradition, and survival won. The emergency decree. Rome did not crown Antony. Rome did not submit to Cleopatra. Instead, it created something new. Emergency authority was granted, shared between Antony and the Senate, with Cleopatra recognized as an allied sovereign rather than an enemy ruler. It was not equality, but it was recognition. For the first time in its history, Rome admitted it could not stand alone. The world shifts quietly. No celebrations followed, no trumpets, no statues raised. Life simply changed. Alexandrian scholars arrived in Rome. Greek mathematicians worked alongside. Roman engineers, Egyptian doctors treated Roman soldiers. Antony reformed the legions, not through brutality, but discipline tied to pay and citizenship. Cleopatra funded schools. Rome had never believed knowledge was power. It was about to learn. The ghost of Octavian. Far from Rome, Octavian watched. He had escaped Actium with his life, but not his destiny. News reached him slowly, painfully. Rome had not collapsed. Rome had adapted, and adaptation was the one thing he could not control. He began writing. Pamphlets, letters, speeches sent secretly into Italy. He spoke of corruption, of foreign decay, of Rome losing itself to Eastern luxury. But the words arrived in full stomachs. They failed to ignite. Antony grows tired. Victory did not suit Antony. Peace weighed heavier than war ever had. Years of battle had sharpened him. Years of politics dulled him. He drank more, laughed louder. The Senate tolerated him, but never trusted him. Cleopatra saw it. She said nothing. Power, she knew, had seasons. The queen builds a future. While Antony struggled, Cleopatra planned. She did not seek monuments. She invested in systems. Trade routes expanded across Africa and Asia. Citizenship laws slowly widened. Slavery, never abolished, was regulated, limited, reshaped. Rome resisted, but Rome also learned. Alexandria became the heart of the world, not through conquest, but gravity. People moved toward it willingly. A world without Augustus. Years passed. Octavian attempted rebellion once. It collapsed before it began. Rome had changed too much. The people remembered hunger. They remembered bread. Octavian died in exile. Not hated, not loved, not remembered. History erased him quietly. Cleopatra's true victory. Cleopatra never ruled Rome. She did something far more dangerous. She changed it. Rome learned to share power, and in doing so, it survived. The weight of peace. Peace is heavier than war. War gives men a single purpose. Peace gives them time to think, and Mark? Antony had never been comfortable with silence. In the years after Rome's transformation, Antony remained the most recognizable man in the empire. Soldiers still saluted him instinctively. Veterans spoke his name with reverence. His victories were carved into memory, not stone. But something inside him had begun to fray. He was a weapon forged for chaos, now asked to govern order. The general without a war. Antony tried. He attended Senate sessions. He listened to petitions. He signed reforms drafted by men half his age, who spoke carefully and smiled too often. Every law felt smaller than a battlefield. Every debate felt like a delay. Rome respected him, but did not belong to him. And that hurt more than betrayal ever had. At night he drank, not in celebration, but in exhaustion. Cleopatra watches silently. Cleopatra saw Antony fading long before Rome did. She never mocked him. She never corrected him publicly. She understood something most rulers never learned. You cannot save someone from the version of themselves they miss. Antony missed clarity, the certainty of enemies, the simplicity of command. Cleopatra ruled differently. She woke early, studied reports, met merchants, scholars, priests, and governors. She listened more than she spoke. She never confused love with leadership, where Antony remembered the past. Cleopatra designed the future, the children of two worlds. Their children became symbols the world had never seen before. They spoke Latin without accent, Greek without effort, Egyptian with reverence. They were raised not as heirs to thrones, but as bridges between civilizations. Roman senators watched them carefully. Some feared them. Others hoped in them. Cleopatra encouraged neither emotion. She believed legitimacy was earned slowly, or not at all. Rome resists change. Rome did not transform easily. Old families resisted expanded citizenship. Traditionalists protested foreign scholars in Roman schools. Priests warned that blending cultures diluted the gods themselves. Cleopatra did not fight them. She waited. Every resistance softened when trade improved. Every protest faded when bellies remained full. Rome had always believed power came from force. It was learning the quieter strength of stability. Antony's last campaign. When unrest flared in the northern provinces, Antony volunteered immediately. He needed war the way some men needed air. The Senate hesitated but approved. Antony left Rome smiling for the first time in years. The campaign was short, decisive, perfectly executed. But something went wrong on the return. An illness. A wound reopened. A fever that would not break. By the time he reached Italy, the general who once terrified the world could barely stand. The man, not the legend. Antony died quietly. Not in battle, not in glory, but in a room overlooking the sea. Cleopatra sat beside him. No speeches were made. No gods were invoked. He held her hand and whispered something history never recorded. And then the man Rome had once loved and feared was gone. Rome mourned him loudly. Cleopatra mourned him silently. A funeral without a crown. Antony's funeral was held without excess. No triumphal arches. No divine claims. Just soldiers, citizens, and silence. Cleopatra stood apart from the crowd. She did not cry. She had learned long ago that grief did not require performance. The Senate debated honors. She declined most of them. Antony had never wanted statues. He had wanted meaning. Cleopatra alone. For the first time in decades, Cleopatra ruled without balance. No Antony to soften Roman suspicion. No Roman general to shield her from whispers. Some senators tested her authority. They underestimated her. Cleopatra did not threaten. She reminded. She showed trade numbers, grain records, border stability. She never raised her voice. And Rome reluctantly listened. The long shadow of memory. Octavian's name resurfaced occasionally, whispered by men who missed order without compromise. Cleopatra allowed discussion. She believed suppression made myth stronger. But Octavian had no victories left to fuel legend. He remained a ghost history refused to revive. The Queen's final years. Cleopatra aged slowly, or perhaps the world aged faster around her. She spent more time in Alexandria, walking the library halls, funding translations, arguing with philosophers. She believed ignorance was the greatest empire killer. Rome continued, imperfect, uneasy, but alive, a world that did not burn. Without a single emperor, Rome did not fracture violently. Power rotated, regions adapted. The library never burned. Science advanced earlier. Trade routes deepened instead of collapsing. Europe did not dominate alone. Africa was not erased. History became wider. Cleopatra's last decision. When she felt death approaching, Cleopatra did not summon priests. She summoned scribes. She dictated laws that limited future rulers. She ensured no single hand could gather absolute power. She wrote letters, not to kings, but to cities. She trusted institutions more than individuals. Her death. Cleopatra died peacefully in Alexandria. No poison, no spectacle, just a queen closing her eyes. On her tomb were carved words in 3 languages. She ruled without destroying. The world that never forgot. 250 words of final. History often pretends it is inevitable, that events move in straight lines, that empires rise and fall because they must. But history is fragile. It bends at moments so small they are often ignored, a decision delayed, a battle misjudged, a woman allowed to speak. The world that followed Cleopatra did not call itself peaceful. It called itself aware, the empire without an emperor. After Cleopatra's death, Rome faced the test it had avoided for generations. No god-king, no single ruler, no Augustus to simplify the future. Many predicted collapse. It did not come. Power rotated between councils in Rome and Alexandria. Regional governors gained autonomy. Trade replaced conquest as the primary currency of influence. Rome learned something no empire before it had learned. Control was expensive. Cooperation was profitable. Borders hardened slowly, not through walls but agreements. Religion without persecution. Faith still evolved. New beliefs emerged from the East, carrying ideas of moral law, compassion, and individual worth. But without an emperor needing unity through religion, faith spread differently. Slower, debated, shaped by philosophy rather than force. Temples and schools coexisted. No mass purges, no holy wars in the early centuries. Ideas competed instead of armies. Science that was not lost. The Library of Alexandria remained intact. Scrolls multiplied instead of burned. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering advanced steadily. Knowledge passed west without interruption. The world entered mechanical innovation centuries earlier, not because of genius, but because of continuity. Europe without exclusivity. Europe still rose, but it did not rise alone. Africa remained central to trade and scholarship. The Middle East became a bridge, not a battlefield. Asia remained a partner rather than a mystery. No single civilization claimed destiny. History widened instead of narrowing. Rome remembered differently. Rome was not worshipped. It was studied, not as the eternal ruler of the world, but as the civilization that learned to stop expanding. Children were taught not only victories, but restraint. Not only laws, but consequences. Rome survived longer than in the original timeline, not because it was stronger, because it was wiser. The myth of Octavian. Octavian became a lesson. A cautionary tale taught quietly. A man who nearly turned fear into destiny. His name survived in footnotes. Not statues, not prayers, not glory. Cleopatra's true legacy. Cleopatra was not remembered as a seductress, nor as a conqueror. She became something far rarer, a ruler who knew when not to rule. A woman who understood that power, when held too tightly, destroys both the hand and what it grasps. Her greatest achievement was not survival. It was restraint. The question history never asks. In another timeline, Rome crowned Augustus. It centralized power. It burned libraries. It fractured violently. And the world inherited centuries of darkness before rediscovering what it had lost. But in this timeline, the darkness never fully came. So the question remains, was Rome's greatest mistake its fall, or its victory? History teaches us to admire conquerors, but conquerors only end stories. It is the quiet rulers, the patient ones, the listeners, who change them. Cleopatra did not defeat Rome. She offered it a mirror, and Rome for once looked. The world that followed was not perfect, but it remembered. And sometimes, remembering is the difference between survival and destruction.